I've got the recipe for you. This dip is just amazing. It just melts in your mouth. Ooh. Bon appetit. Hey everybody, I'm Vera Stewart and welcome to the VeryVera Show. I'm in a different location today. I want to welcome you to my home, and you know I've been teasing you for months that I was doing a renovation in my tiny little galley kitchen. Well, guess what? It's complete, it's beautiful, and I can't wait to show it to you. Sub-Zero and Wolf came in with their beautiful appliances. They actually have a brand new dishwasher that I'm introducing today. It's by Cove. I love it. And then Star Granite came in and redid all of my countertops. I've got lighting now under my cabinets. So the little galley kitchen has become my little haven. I just absolutely love it. But today's show is going to be all about pound cakes. You know, that was our signature item of my company for years. And I'm going to take you through the steps very slowly because the reviews on our pound cakes from the book are some of the best. So let's maybe go through a little bit of the history of the company and why even pound cakes was part of my product line. So back in 1984, I started a catering business out of my home kitchen. Having left being a high school home economics teacher, I thought, you know, I'm going to stay at home, raise my children, and everything will be just perfect. Well, that lasted for about 6 months, and I got a little antsy, and I thought, you know, I'm going to take this catering business to the next level. So I moved into a retail space so I could do catering, you know, with a license and be able to do weddings, grand openings, that sort of thing. But you know, if there wasn't one of those going on, I really didn't have anything to do. So my idea was to take my grandmother's pound cake recipe and put it in the mail. So I got friends, family, sorority sisters from Georgia, and I put those cakes in the mail. Had a little card in there. Did it arrive in good condition? Was it still moist when you got it? Did you put any of it in the freezer, and how did it taste when it came out? So those were all the criteria that helped me perfect over that summer of 1993 whether or not the mail order business would work. So by the beginning of 93, that fall, I was able to ship pound cakes to those people, and then I had a mailing list because in Augusta, Georgia, there's a big golf tournament. Had a lot of customers that came to town for that, so I immediately had a mailing list. So the mail order business was created. We got catalogs going. We just perfected that through the years. And the pound cake was a favorite thing that we did. It was just the best gift to give. If you sent it to an office, everybody could enjoy it. If you sent it to somebody that couldn't use it right away, they could put it in the freezer and take it out 6 months later. So magazines started getting interested, and one by one, magazines would write little articles about VeryVera. Well, one day we got a call from Southern Living. And you know, in the early 90s, I mean, people just could not wait for their Southern Living magazine to come. As a matter of fact, I still can't wait for mine to come. When they wrote about us, honestly, we made a sale in every state in less than 10 days. We put a map in the hall of our building, and every time an order would come in, we would put a little pin where that cake shipped. It was just the best. So with that, you know, every holiday we had sales, but there was some months maybe there wasn't a holiday, so we created what we called the Cake of the Month Club, kind of a take on Harry and David's Fruit of the Month Club, and we always had a special cake that was ideal for that month. Loved that, even did a calendar with it. But the loose poppy seed cake that I'm going to show you how to make today is not only one of our absolute favorites, but you're going to actually meet the namesake of that cake today. My sister Lou will be joining us at the end of the show today to, you know, share her thoughts about this cake, and we'll just have a great time together. Can't wait to introduce you to her. So we're going to walk through the steps little by little. I'm going to talk to you about room temperature and why that's important. We're going to go over particular brands that I point out in my cookbook that make these recipes perfect. And you know, all of this is based on chemistry. That was a requirement at the University of Georgia for home economics education, and that subject was just so awful for me, and I thought, why do I need to know about chemistry to cook? Well, obviously I have found out through this process that it is extremely important to the finished product. So let's get in the kitchen and get started on that loose poppy seed. Welcome back, everybody, and don't you love the kitchen? You know, if you remember my kitchen before, it was really dark and, you know, it was pretty, but it just wasn't light and airy, and needless to say, all this under-counter lighting has really made a difference. So we're gonna be learning more about it as we go through today, but I wanna get started on this pound cake. So first of all, you always preheat the oven. This recipe calls for 325 degrees, and since I'm only baking one, I'm just going to use my regular bake feature on the oven. If I was doing several and using several racks, I could use the convection feature on my M-Series Wolf oven. And I've gone ahead and creamed the butter and sugar. And this is the first lesson in the chemistry part of this recipe. Most recipes will say cream the butter and sugar until it's light and fluffy. Is that 5 minutes? Is it 10 minutes? Well, actually, in this case, it is 20 minutes. So set your timer, do that, which I have done ahead. You'll see this mixture go from a bright yellow because of the unsalted butter to a lighter yellow to, at the end, this beautiful, fluffy, white mixture, which means that the sugar has incorporated itself very well into that butter, and that will be part of the leavening that will make this pound cake rise beautifully. All right, so let's put this back down, turn the mixer back on, and get that fluff going again. The next part of this recipe is the incorporation of the dry and wet alternating. So I've got King Arthur cake flour. I highly recommend using it. It's really great for baking. I'm going to add in my baking soda, and you just want to whisk that together, and rather than, you know, mess up a whisk, just use a fork. You just want to incorporate that into the flour. All right, so my wet ingredient are my eggs. So this is another chemistry tip. These need to be at room temperature, and you want to go ahead and crack them into a clear glass measuring cup or anything that's got a spout, so that you can add those eggs one yolk at a time. So we'll be alternating that with our dry mixture. So I love to use a 1/3 cup measuring cup as my utensil to get it in there without going all over the kitchen. And with this mixer, you know, I've got my regular stainless steel bowl, but then I've got this glass bowl that's a little higher on the sides, so that works out really well when I've got a lot of things to add. So in the chemistry part of pound cakes, this recipe is a little different from all of the other ones. There must be 12 or 13 pound cake recipes in my cookbook. All of them cook at 325. All of them alternate the wet and dry, but the wet in every other recipe is heavy cream. In this one, at the end, we're going to add sour cream. So the wet ingredient in this recipe becomes the egg. And the slow incorporation of this, you know, incorporates that air, makes this batter very fluffy. And then, you know, you just get your favorite music on, you become part of the process. You know, this is one of the most calming things I do. Instead of beating my head against the wall when I've had a bad day, I actually want to get in the kitchen and make a pound cake. All right, and these are large eggs, by the way, which again is part of the chemistry of it. So now I've got just enough that I can maybe start doing it this way. And just down in that bowl, this is really incorporating well. Okay, 2 more eggs to go. And you know, if you've got a young person that you want to teach the process and understand that you have to be patient and understanding of the process and the final result, this would be a great way to learn. Taking that 20 minutes when the sugar and butter are mixing up to get all of your other ingredients measured is also a great use of time. All right, so that's incorporated. So now we're going to start with the flavorings. So we've got 5 different flavorings. We've got lemon, orange, coconut, butter, and my favorite, almond. We're going to add some sour cream into this. And then the last ingredient is the poppy seed. And quick story on that, we had to quit making this cake, which was everybody's favorite, because these poppy seeds made you fail a drug test. So we'll have a little bit more about that when we come back from the break. So come back and join me in just a few minutes. Vera's Corner is sponsored by TaxSlayer. It's your refund. Go get it. You know, I absolutely love to bake, but over the years, I've recognized that some recipes don't tell you everything you need to know. So today, let me share some of my favorite baking tips. To find out if your oven has hot spots, spread out several pieces of bread directly on the oven rack, then bake at 350. Keep an eye on the bread slices to see which slices get darker quicker, and those areas are your hot spots. The type of pan or baking dish you use makes a difference. Metal pans are good for most baking, but lighter metal browns more evenly than dark metal, so keep that in mind. Make sure you follow the instructions for the temperature of your butter. Deviating from this recommendation in your recipe could completely change the texture of your final product. If you don't know how to properly measure flour, today is the day. Rather than drag your measuring cup through the bag or canister, you need to lightly spoon the flour into the measuring cup, being sure not to pack the flour. Continue to spoon until the flour is mounded over the top, then use a flat spatula or the back of a knife to level off the cup. Here's how much the weight of a cup of flour can differ if you don't spoon the flour in. Finally, if you store soft cookies or baked goods with a piece of white bread, it will keep them moist longer. I hope these tips will make you a more confident baker. Welcome back, everybody. And if you're just joining me, I'm in the middle of a loose poppy seed pound cake. It just smells wonderful. But I hope you loved those baking tips in Vera's Corner today, because all of that kind of goes along with what we're talking about. Chemistry, the use of the right product, the room temperature, all of that's wonderful. So just that batter, you can see the lines. It just is like velvet. It's the most beautiful batter. And this particular cake, because it has so many flavorings in it, the aroma is unbelievable. Just love it. All right, so I've got all my Nordic ware pans on the counter, and Nordic ware pans were what we used in our mail order business, so I can't even remember how many of these we had, but these are the actual pans that I used to bake this cake, and they're just really heavy. So if you like baking and you want to get into pound cake baking, you need to invest in a Nordic ware pan. So the seasoning, after you've used it a lot, is very much like a cast iron skillet. The more you use it, the better it gets. But this baker's joy is another secret ingredient to making sure that it comes out of the pan well. So you'll find this where you find any of the oils, the cooking sprays at the grocery store, but you really want to coat this well. So this is a combination of oil and flour. And just take your time and make sure that you get all the edges of it done. Looks like a lot, but that's just perfect. All right, so now we're ready to get this batter in the pan. And these are the memories. This is my grandmother literally taking her finger and going all the way around this paddle to get all that batter off. And of course I was saying, Grandmama, can you please just leave a little bit on there so I can lick that paddle? She usually left me just a little bit. All right, so now we're gonna take this off. And I just want to go through this batter. And this is another secret. Put a little piece of wax paper on the counter, and then you're not creating a mess every time you take that spatula out. All right, so you see what I mean about the creaminess of it? And just taking a couple of more swipes through it before you put it in the pan, just make sure that that is evenly distributed. And just look how velvety and smooth this batter is. So just go all the way around the edges, and you're gonna give this a good whack on the counter before it actually goes in the oven. But I've even created, you know, in the book, instructions on where this batter should be touching the pan. So the pan that I'm using for this cake is a 12-cup pan. So you're thinking, well, how do I know that's a 12? How do I know mine's a 12-cup pan? You might know because it's on the bottom of the pan. But the way you'll know for sure is to take your measuring cup and see how many cups of water will go in that pan before you actually put your batter in it. And we would scrape those bowls clean too to make sure we got all that batter. So now I'm just going to take my spatula and go around the top. Here again, get all that good batter off that spatula. Leave enough for your grandchild. All right, so now, 1, 2, 3. This is going to go into a 325-degree oven for an hour and 20 minutes. But every oven is not exactly right. I love my Wolf oven because it bakes evenly. It bakes at the exact temperature that the thermometer is reading on the outside. But I always use my skewer. This is just a wooden skewer that you would put on the grill with vegetables or shish kebab. But you're going to stick that in to make sure that it's good and clean before you take it out of the oven. So we're going to get this in. When we come back from the break, you're going to get to meet my sister Lou, learn a little bit more about this cake and her business. So come back with me in just a few minutes. Welcome back, everybody. And can you tell this is my sister? Oh my gosh, I've got on really tall shoes today because otherwise she is a lot taller than me. But I'm so happy, Lou, that you were able to come.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Vera. It's such a pleasure to be here and see all the improvements to your house. I just love the kitchen.
I mean, it was so dark before. It's really beautiful. It's just beautiful. And, you know, Lou is a very busy person. Lou lives in Columbus, Georgia with her husband, Tripp. She's the mother of 6 children. They're all very successful, adorable. She's got how many grandchildren?
7 and 1 on the way.
7 and 1 on the way. But if you follow Lou, you may know that she was extremely busy at the beginning of the year because she was a contestant on Shark Tank.
And we got a deal.
They did, and their business, Slumber Pod, is just blooming. So I encourage you to go to that site and look at it and see what all is going on with her company. She's got some growth things coming up. But let's talk about this pound cake a minute. Doesn't it smell so good? So, you know, we always let it sit on the rack after it comes out of the oven for about 15 minutes before you flip it. And that's where I think everybody gets so nervous. But you know, if you've got a great seasoned pan and if you follow the steps, it's just gonna flip right out. And then at that point, you can either go ahead and put it on your cake stand or just wrap it really well in saran wrap. And these things will last in the freezer for at least 6 months. And during the mail order days, remember people would say, I've had this cake in the freezer for a year, is it still good? You know, and so it just works out. So I want you to try a little bite and see. But you know what I said earlier, and you know, you worked in a large company where I'm sure drug tests were part of the deal at work.
Absolutely.
And you would fail if you had eaten a slice of this during break. So we had to change Lou's Poppyseed to Lou's cream cheese. You know, it was
delicious.
Isn't that so good?
You know what it needs? A little heating up and a little ice cream.
Yes. So those are some of our tips. Put it in the toaster oven, sear it with some butter in a pan, add some whipped cream and fruit, makes it really, really great.
Delicious.
So this part of the business has just, you know, allowed us to now with the cookbook, give people tips. I've wanted to do a show like this today to introduce just the steps little by little of how that works. And you know, we grew up eating this.
But I learn something every time you do this. So this is so beneficial to see the step-by-step and know all the inside scoop from the expert.
Well, the boxes that we ship the cake in, you know, through the years, what started with the can, and remember you would put like cookies in your can and people would think they came from VeryVera because you saved all the cans that I shipped the cakes in. But the Lou's cream cheese, which is the new cake that we did that came with that, is the cake that goes into a cold oven. So of all the recipes for the pound cakes, that's the one that you put it into a cold oven. And that batter is so thick that it needs the cold oven to kind of get that batter developing. Again, you probably were way better at chemistry than I was. But I have learned a little something along the way about it. So, you know, we are so glad that you were with us today and to go through, I guess, Pound Cake 101 is what we did. I want you to follow my sister Lou at Slumber Pod and what's going on with her business. And I certainly want you to come back and join us again next week. And you know, Lou, I always say, no matter what you do on the Very Vera Show, do it in good taste. I've got great taste in Sisters because I've got another one that's also wonderful. Come back and join us again next week.
To see what's cooking with the Very Vera Show, follow us on Facebook and Instagram and on Cottage Ketchup.